because there's insecurity.
Yeah.
Usually there's a lack of self-belief or a lack of humility or deep insecurity on the other side of not feeling heard. So what's the wall? What's the wall that you're up against?
What arenas are you finding yourself where you're feeling the least heard in? Because oftentimes when it's you talking about something that your partner has direct contribution with. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast, where we talk all things relationships. Today we have episode number 99, coming up on 100.
My goodness.
This is episode number 99.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
2024.
Yes. 2024. We're going to have magnificent relationships in 2024. Okay, so episode, number 99 is why you never, in all caps, feel heard in your relationship. All right, so two things. Number one, Next Level Podcast Solutions, thank you so much for producing this show and so many others. I believe it's 56 others. Thank you for allowing us to do our best work. And Emilia, as always, ladies first, what is your intention for today's episode?
I just checked my intention. I was like, yeah, maybe I want to switch it up a little bit. So I'm going to go off script a little bit of my own intention.
Ruh-roh.
My intention for our listeners is actually just plain and simple, but extremely powerful, which is to help each and every single one of you that are listening in today and joining us to feel more heard in your relationships. Because one of the things that we see here and experience time and time again is that if you're not feeling seen, heard, and valued, then your relationships end up suffering and you don't really feel that great about yourself. So my intention is to help our listeners with that.
All right. So my only advice is to just talk louder. No, that's the end of the episode. No. All right. So where was this episode born? Emilia and I are often talking behind the scenes about what episodes we think would be most valuable. What are our clients going through? What are we going through? This, that, and the other thing. And I had this realization that my past relationships, I didn't always feel super heard. And I often had these situations where I would try to improve and I would be up against what we call a fixed mindset. Mm-hmm. So this actually happened with my mother, and I'm going to share this story and then I'll tie it back to my previous relationships, and hopefully you'll resonate with what you're going through in your intimate relationship at times. So I'm with my mom and we're driving to our place, and I'm driving her, and she's on the phone with my sister. And I hadn't spoken to my sister in a couple years at this point because I had set a boundary, and my mom was on the phone with her and said, "Hey, do you want to talk to Alan?" And while I was driving, I was like, okay, I don't want to make a thing of this. So I said, "Hey, how are you? How's it going?" I talked to my sister. I did my thing. And afterwards, we were just pulling up to our place, and I said, "Mom, in the future, can you please do me a favor and ask me in advance next time?" And she got very defensive. And she's like, "Well, I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? It's your sister. I didn't know." I said, No. I know you didn't know. That's why I'm bringing this up now. So for our listeners, anyone watching or listening, think of a time when you tried to communicate a truth, set a boundary, talk about something important to you. Give feedback.
Ask for a different experience.
Yes, especially feedback. Give feedback for the future. And then you are up against this wall. I didn't know. Like, how was I supposed to know? It's no. I'm not talking about now. That was all fine. I get it. You didn't know. I didn't tell you in advance. I knew it was going to happen. I should have seen it coming. That's on me. But in the future, can you please make sure that you ask me? And what I realize now, my mom has memory challenges. And I don't think that she believes that she's going to remember. So instead of say, "Yeah, no worries, in the future I'll ask you," I think she unconsciously is just getting really defensive of, "I don't know if I can change that. I don't know if I'm going to remember." And instead of being vulnerable and just saying, "Honestly, I don't think I'm going to remember," I struggle with my memory. She instead is like, I didn't know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about here is if you've ever tried to give your partner feedback or bring something up courageously and vulnerably and kind of hit a wall where you're not being heard and the other person is getting overly defensive of, I didn't know, like, how was I supposed to know? That is usually you're up against a fixed mindset, and that can be a big challenge. And if you're out there watching or listening to this show, you obviously have a growth mindset, because a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, I'll just define it quickly. A fixed mindset means you don't believe you can change. So in that moment, my mom didn't believe she could change. She didn't believe she'd remember. She didn't believe that that was even important. And a growth mindset is, yeah, I'll work on it. I'm not going to be perfect, but I'll work on it. Yeah, you're heard. Thank you for the feedback. I'll improve. My bad, I didn't know, but for the future, now I will. You can tell the two energies in that. One of them is very future-oriented and very improvement-oriented. The other one is kind of like, listen, how the hell was I supposed to know? Very little ownership gets taken when there's a fixed mindset and a lack of self-belief.
For sure. And I think what's really interesting about this, as I was just reflecting and also listening to you, Love, I have been there in terms of, you know, a past version of me had a really bad memory. So I know what that feels like in terms of not necessarily believing in yourself and your own capabilities to be able to do better next time. And I know what that can feel like. So I can resonate on that level with maybe that unconscious part of your mom. But here's the thing, what I think is really interesting as we navigate our relationships, a lot of us already are not getting great sleep. And I know that might be like a sidestep to this episode, but if you just think about the large majority of human beings aren't really getting great sleep, and then their memory is struggling, that isn't really necessarily helping them in building their belief when you do bring to them a piece of feedback, like for example, with your mom. What ends up happening is that compounds over time. And oftentimes when we enter into relationships, we're likely seeking some of the characteristics that our parents, and this is super unconscious, so I'll keep this high level, and this is the psychology underneath dating and whatnot, but we oftentimes seek certain characteristics that our parents portrayed. So for example, your mom's mastery driven in certain things, that's something that you are seeking in a partner, right? Unconsciously. You got into relationships after that, and you shared this a little bit earlier in the episode with listeners. Why did you never feel heard? Because likely they also exhibited areas of low self-belief, and that was brought into the relationship with you. And we go into the dating arena and we don't necessarily know who has a fixed mindset, who has a growth mindset. I mean, I'm living proof that I am a hyper growth mindset, but yet in one area you've actually called out where I had a limiting belief.
Well, let me share this. I think this will be tangible. So Emilia is very, very, very growth mindset. Obviously, our listeners know that. But I will come up against certain things where you will have trouble. And I'll give an example.
Yeah.
Hey, sweetheart, tomorrow, can you please remind me XYZ?
Yeah.
And you'll be like, no, because you don't believe in your own memory. So you don't believe that you will be able to remind me. And then I'll say, holidays, I'll usually say something like, I'm sorry, I put my monkey on your back. I don't like to put monkeys on other people's backs. Like, these are kind of my problems. And while I might like your support of, hey, do you remember where I put my XYZ? Because we live together. Hey, do you know where my sunglasses are?
Right.
You're like, I can't even remember where my own damn sunglasses are. You think I'm going to remember yours? And with Emilia, there's very few areas where she has sort of a fixed mindset and where feedback is hard to receive for her.
Yeah.
And so analyze yourself and your partner. Where do they take feedback really well?
Yeah.
No big deal, not insecure, not an issue. They have a growth mindset. Where do they really struggle to take feedback? Maybe it's around memory. What's the core of that? And so the last piece that I want to share about this is wherever so self-belief is underneath this.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in, it can look like a lot of people have a lot of self-belief.
Yeah.
What I've found in all my coaching, which is I just surpassed my 5,000th coaching session, I have come to realize that when I was the least self-belief, I acted the most. And so oftentimes the person who has the least confidence is actually barking the loudest. And so the people who are portraying confidence from the outside looking in are often actually have the least self-belief versus one of my clients who you wouldn't know it. She's not boastful. She's not loud. She's got level 10 self-belief. The amount that she genuinely believes in herself is off the charts, but you'd never know it. From the inside out, it's a 10. From the outside in, it's like, maybe a 4. Then there's other people. From the outside in, it looks like a 10, but on the inside out, it's like a 2. And so if you're watching or listening to this, think about yourself and think about your partner. Oh, the people who I think have level 10 confidence are actually a fixed mindset because they don't believe in themselves. So it kind of breaks our brain a bit. And I think that that's kind of valuable for everybody to contemplate.
For sure. I have a quote in mind that is like, there's a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And how that relates to this episode is the people that never feel heard oftentimes are the people that, you know, it's not the loudest that are being spoken in how they're speaking. It's not necessarily screaming at your partner that's going to get you to be heard. It's because likely the other partner is doing more with their mouth than they are with their ears. They're not listening. So like in that example, for like when Alan talked about giving me a piece of feedback and it came to one of my biggest, deepest insecurities, which is memory, likely it is more my mouth that starts talking than really listening to the root cause underneath what he's sharing in terms of feedback with me, which is he would like support. And even if I'm not fully 1000% capable of giving him the support that he needs, listening comes before me talking and putting up an excuse or putting up a wall or putting up a protector or putting up some, oh, I didn't know that you were looking for that. That's why he's bringing me whatever this is. And so for, I think the couples that are listening to this, when you aren't feeling heard, it's likely because there's a lot more talking coming from the other end.
And which is because there's insecurity.
Yeah.
Usually there's a lack of self-belief or a lack of humility or deep insecurity on the other side of not feeling heard. So what's the wall? What's the wall that you're up against? And I guess my next question, sweetheart, would be how would they go about this? Because with my mom, I just explained, I'm talking about the future, not right now. I'm cool with it this time. I'm just talking about the future. And we didn't really go super deep because we were almost here. But if I could go back in time, I would try to explain it in a way where, oh, okay, so you're not trusting that you're going to remember next time. Okay, I'll remind you.
Right.
Next time I'll remind you when you're on the phone that, like, I'll give you a signal.
It's a boundary. No, thank you.
No, thank you. The last thing I want to do is talk on the phone right now.
Right. You're with her.
Yeah.
You want to actually be present with her and connect.
As a matter of fact, there's even a deeper boundary that I want to share, which is I would have preferred us. We don't hang out that much.
Yeah.
Why are you calling someone else? We easily could connect.
True.
And that was my honest truth. And that's a whole other episode, though.
And that's what's really interesting is where a lot of relationships, they want to connect, but yet like the deeper truths you don't get to until after, right? Hindsight is always 20/20. And so the bigger thing here too that I want to kind of bring in this episode is that a lot of us are verbal processors, meaning that we'll talk our way through our own self-awareness or understanding. So if you are the person that's the growth-minded person in your relationship listening to this episode, likely you're not necessarily talking your way through the problem-solving or self-awareness that you're having. You're listening right now to this podcast as an example. Whereas your partner, if you were to bring up why you never feel heard, they're going to see that as an open door for their mouth to just run and try to process through whatever it is that they're interpreting this feedback. And so I think that we as a society too have a really big issue with just holding space and holding silence when someone does give you feedback. And it's in that discomfort around silence. When if I were to give you feedback, babe, around something, you know, it's like, can you pause? And can you just listen to that feedback without actually jumping your consciousness to a defense, to a whatever it is, right? Very, very few of us are actively listening without having a response ready because of the deep, deep discomfort around actually listening in silence.
Hi, Amy and Chris Lenny is here to give a quick moment of appreciation for Alan and Emilia. We have been working with them for a few months now, maybe 6, maybe going on 6 months now, and we appreciate you guys so much. To see you guys work as a team, to help couples work as a team is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. Not only have you helped us reconnect and helped us with our marriage, you've also helped us through big life moments, with boundaries, with creating our own stable unit at home. We appreciate you guys so, so much.
Yes, truly heartfelt appreciate you guys and everything you've done for us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. We love you.
So what I would say for our listeners is those of us who are struggling with those of us, I actually Don't include myself in that bucket right now because I feel very heard in my relationship. But for those of you, because I have been there where I haven't felt heard in my past relationships. Number one is like everything. It's self-awareness. If by listening to this episode, you recognize like, okay, this is definitely a trend. And this is a theme that I'm starting to see again and again pop up in my relationship. The second step after self-awareness is, babe, you mentioned it actually earlier. What arenas are you finding yourself where you're feeling the least heard in? Because oftentimes when it's you talking about something that your partner has direct contribution with, so like, for example, if you were to talk to me about my memory, that's getting my ego already ignited. And underneath that, there's a lot of fear, insecurity. But if you were to give me a piece of feedback about something that's not directly attached to me, let's say, for example, the painting that I hung up.
Something you're not insecure about.
Yeah.
I think that's a better frame is what's something you're not insecure about. So you have very few body insecurities. Mm-hmm. So if I gave you feedback in fitness, you wouldn't have like a big reaction. Whereas in the past, I've tried to do that with partners to help them. And it was like, no, do not go there.
Right.
Because they're so deeply insecure about their physique.
Right. Well, here's the thing. Is the arena where you as the listener are not feeling heard in, does it have to do with that person, your partner in this case? Does it have to do directly with them, the feedback that you're giving with them, whatever you're trying to speak to them about? Because likely if it has directly to do with them, you're not feeling heard.
And when you say to do with them, you mean, is it their insecurity or is it your inability to communicate effectively?
Likely it's more the first than the second. Likely it's their insecurity that you're trying to communicate to, but you're up against their protector that's preventing you from going a level deeper, because again, then you start to hit that glass ceiling of the fixed mindset where they don't necessarily believe in their own capabilities to improve for you in this relationship. Yeah. And that's very scary.
This is why in Relationship Talks coaching, it's so helpful because it's kind of a triangulation effect. Mm-hmm. One of the partners talks to us about something, and the other partner is just listening into that rather than being talked at.
Right.
And that triangle effect, it's like, oh, I didn't realize that that's what you always meant. Mm-hmm. Whereas when they were trying to give that feedback directly, you were up against a wall. It's almost like you can go around the wall if you ping it off of a different person and then volley it over. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, that's, if you've never done couples counseling or relationship talks coaching, that's one of the values. If you're not feeling heard, you definitely will after that.
Yeah. Reminds me when I used to play indoor soccer and like we could bounce the ball off of the sides to get into the net instead of having to go directly into the net 100%. And have to work with the goalie.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. So the goalie will block it if you go directly, but if you bounce it off the wall into the goal, that's exactly what couples counseling and or relationship talks coaching can do. Yeah. And I did couples counseling once in a relationship before, and I remember being blown away of, wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
I never even realized you felt that way, and you never realized I felt heard, she felt heard. It was really good.
It's amazing. Yeah. So what can be done when you have two people that just want what's best for your relationship and for you to actually be heard? There's so much power underneath that, because you might not even realize that you have continuously been in this relationship not feeling heard, and it might be oozing out in other ways. Maybe, like, for example, I know people who have not felt heard in their relationship, and all of a sudden that boils over into impulsive shopping, excessive drinking, infidelity, even eventually over time, built-in resentment. You end up growing apart, and it comes out in all these weird ways by other means. I mean, it's just really a coping mechanism for trying to help self-regulate, because deep down, we all want to feel heard. We want to feel seen, and we want to feel valued. And when our biggest relationships aren't that way, because maybe conditioning of our parents or of our past, that ends up becoming a big problem in relationships. So we definitely don't want to see you guys there if you're listening to this episode. So please take number 1, self-awareness. Where are you not feeling heard ever? Number 2, go into what specific arena is that? And then number 3, I would say start to volley this conversation up either to your partner, or I would say book a call for relationship talks.
Yeah, if you're having this challenge, you can book solo if you're not ready to bring your partner, and we can talk to you about strategies around how to do this. Or you can bring your partner and volley into the net like she did with the soccer analogy.
Hey.
Anything else you want to add before we go, love?
This is a skill that over time can really have incredible progress. And it is so worth putting in the effort to really explore yourself, explore your relationship, and explore your past when it comes to this, because I know what it feels like now to feel extremely heard in my relationship. And that's only by being able to do step number 1, step number 2, and step number 3 for me was actually being in the relationship with you. So
just for our listeners, and this is not me trying to fish for compliments, but what do you think is attributing most to you feeling heard in our relationship? Because I can volley it back. I also feel really heard. And really what it is to your point, heard, seen, understood, valued, appreciated. These are the words that you really want in a relationship. Heard, seen, valued, understood, and appreciated. Understood.
yeah.
And I think it's your growth mindset. You're just not insecure. I can give you feedback without it being a whole thing. As a matter of fact, I'm
Yeah.
actually insecure more than you are when I'm giving feedback.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, that was, I'm like,
good.
where was that on the Richter scale for you? 0 to 10. You're like, 0.2. It's like, oh my God, I was so scared to tell you that.
Yeah.
So I think for the listeners, it's your growth mindset more than anything. You just believe in your own ability to transform at such a drastic level that it allows me to give feedback on everything.
Definitely.
And there's only a few moments where you have done I didn't know.
yeah.
It's okay. And it's rare. But that used to be my whole world, you know?
It's so true. And that's why I say a lot of people bring their past, experiences with family and past relationships, because all of us have conditioning of a past, when it comes to this arena. And usually that's unconsciously and unintentionally brought into the relationship that you really want to build. And what I think is so great underneath all of this, which is again, kind of showing my growth mindset, is like wherever your levels of self-belief are at, they can be improved. Like even for example, back with your mom, it's like her memory is going to improve because now she's focusing in on the things that contributed to that.
Yeah. Better
slowly
sleep.
over time, better sleep, fitness, all those things. And when it comes to relationships, I know that my focal point has shifted, and that's allowed me to even become a more capable partner of listening. But to kind of bring this full back to what you had to ask me, babe, I think one of the biggest things, yes, is absolutely growth mindset. But second to that is you actually listen. You listen more than you talk. I mean, you talk a lot, and it's beautiful and meaningful and so incredible every time. And you listen just as much as you talk. And that ratio,
Maybe not
is
on
huge.
this podcast.
Maybe not on this podcast, but
I am a speaker and a podcaster and a coach, and I talk for a living.
right.
But I'm very
In our
grateful for
relationship, for sure. Yeah, you definitely listen, and not just listen to answer. You listen, you take it in, you process, you sit in the discomfort of that micro moment of like, I'm not quite really sure where I'm at, but I'm going to kind of explore this with you and let me mirror back what I believe I heard.
Well, I would say my goal is to understand.
Yeah.
And when I'm insecure, it's to be heard or whatever, and I just ping pong and right.
To be understood versus being right. I think that's at play.
Yeah. Okay. We did an episode on that. We should do that again at some point.
Yeah.
The goal is to understand and to improve. It's not to be right or to be heard. Sometimes it is when I'm insecure or triggered.
Yeah.
But the goal is to improve the relationship. If you're giving feedback, it's not for no reason. It's because there's something you want to improve. There's something you want to make better. And that's the world I want to live in. That's how the flower blossoms. That's how the relationship blossoms, is improvement.
That's how you
Our
be a
relationship
team.
is so much better than it was in the beginning. And it was already magnificent in the beginning. So we're 4.5 years in coming up on. And it's amazing what can happen when you have two partners who hear each other, see each other, to understand each other, and they take feedback in a way where it's constructive and not destructive. And that's really a simple formula, but it's so challenging. So it's simple, but not easy.
Yeah.
And if you need help with that, again, Relationship Talks Coaching, the link is in the show notes. The first one is free. And we're not going to sell you anything. We're just going to help. And then we're going to suggest if you want to do more, you can, but there's no obligation.
Definitely. Yeah. So with that said, while you're also in the show notes, if you've been a longtime lover, longtime listener of the Conscious Couples podcast, you also know that every single month we have a free live virtual event that we host. The third Thursday of every single month. This is going to be our 39th 31st. I'm like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
And the topic
It's
is
going to
going
be
to
our
be
365th annual.
the topic is going to be getting into overcoming insecurities in your relationship, which actually, this is a beautiful bridge into that. Digging into all things insecurities. Insecurities can be that poison apple that poisons everything that's good in your relationship. So how do you overcome those in a relationship in a constructive manner that brings you two together closer than it does pull you apart? So we would love to have you with us. You don't have to have your mic or camera on if you don't want to, but definitely join us. Register ahead of time. Save your seat. We'd love to see you there.
And thank you for everyone who came to our last one. We had such a good showing. I was expecting it to be crickets with the holidays. So apparently the Conscious Couples podcast and Relationship Talks events are now holiday proof.
Crushing it.
Very cool. So thank you.
guys rock.
We appreciate you so much. And as always, thank you for listening. It's not about you or me. It's about the we. And also me. We'll talk to you next time.
And me. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is Lazaros88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.